Imagine a ripe apple, plucked by your distant ancestor 50,000 years ago, somewhere in the African savanna. It is small, tough, sour, and incredibly fibrous. To him, this fruit is a rare evolutionary treasure, a guarantee that his brain will get quick energy today and he won't be poisoned. Now, look at a modern glazed donut. It contains more sugar than an ancient hunter consumed in several months. Why does our brain still react to this carbohydrate concentrate as if our very survival depended on it? What if our strongest dietary instinct, which saved humanity from extinction for millions of years, is now quietly rewriting our biology under new rules of the game? We are used to thinking that a sweet tooth is just a matter of weak will or a bad habit. It seems to us that simply pulling ourselves together and showing some discipline will solve the problem. This is a convenient explanation.
It shifts all the responsibility to the individual, leaving us alone with our guilt in front of the mirror. But the truth is, a flawless biological machine, fine-tuned by millions of years of brutal natural selection, is working against us. In the wild, pure sugar, like white cubes or refined granules, simply does not exist. For our ancestors, a sweet taste was the primary and only signal of safety. If a fruit on a tree was sweet, it was ripe. It held no poison, but was packed with easy carbs needed to power a greedy human brain and muscles during the heat of a hunt. The value of such a resource was incredibly high, and the resource itself was extremely rare. Paleolithic wild fruits were chemically light years away from the glossy produce we buy in supermarkets today. They had almost no sucrose, and in terms of taste and fiber content, they were closer to a modern, bitter bell pepper. To survive under such harsh conditions, our body developed a perfect survival algorithm.
The moment receptors on our tongue catch the slightest hint of sweetness, they send an urgent signal straight to the brain's reward center. In that very second, a massive surge of dopamine occurs. The brain is literally flooded with pleasure hormones, commanding, "This is incredibly valuable. Eat more. Eat everything you can find before someone else takes it." This mechanism forced our ancestors to gorge on precious carbs down to the last bite, converting excess energy into fat reserves for the inevitable coming famine. But what happens when this ancient, scarcity-driven survival mechanism suddenly finds itself in a world of absolute abundance? What happens when human biological vulnerability becomes the very foundation of a multi-billion-dollar global industry? After all, sugar's journey to our tables didn't start at innocent candy factories, but in colonial pharmacies, where it was sold as a potent drug capable of driving even kings mad.
For a long time, sugar remained an elite pleasure, a true colonial gold, available only to kings and high nobility. In the 16th century, Europeans didn't scoop it into tea. They weighed it carefully on apothecary scales. Sugar was sold as an expensive medicine for exhaustion, fever, and stomach pain. Queen Elizabeth I of England loved this medicine so much that by the end of her life, her teeth had turned completely black from decay. Surprisingly, in London's high society back then, this was not seen as a defect. On the contrary, rotten teeth became a status symbol of extreme wealth. Courtiers who couldn't afford sugar would intentionally blacken their healthy teeth with charcoal to appear successful and wealthy. Everything changed in the 19th century when humanity mastered the industrial refining of sugar beets and cane. They learned to strip away everything extra from the raw crop: fiber, minerals, water, and vitamins, leaving only a chemically pure, concentrated carbohydrate, sucrose. Sugar became cheap, flooded the markets, and stopped being a medicine. It turned into a mass market commodity. By the mid-20th century, the sugar industry had grown into a massive empire. But that was exactly when it ran into serious trouble. In the 1960s, a real epidemic of cardiovascular disease broke out in the US. Men in their prime were dying of heart attacks. Doctors and scientists raised the alarm and began searching for the cause. There were two main suspects: fatty foods, and sugar. In 1967, 3 prominent Harvard scientists published a massive review of research in the prestigious New England Journal of Medicine. Their conclusion was clear. Sugar was completely safe for arteries, and fat alone was to blame for everything. This publication literally flipped the medical world upside down.
Supermarket shelves filled up with fat-free foods, and people panicked, avoiding butter, meat, and eggs, replacing them with light carbs. The truth came to light only half a century later. In 2016, researcher Kristen Kearns stumbled upon internal correspondence in the archives of the organization known today as the Sugar Association. The documents shocked scientists. It turned out that back in the 1960s, the Sugar Research Foundation had secretly paid those same Harvard professors an amount equal to $50,000 today. For that money, the scientists were to write an article with a pre-approved result: exonerate sugar and shift all the blame onto saturated fats. This fraud shaped global dietary guidelines for 50 years to come. For decades, we trusted official recommendations, never suspecting they were written under the dictation of a commercial lobby.
But while consumers were busy avoiding fat, food giants were already preparing a new technological revolution that would make sugar completely invisible to our eyes. From a dessert, it transformed into a hidden ghost lurking on every supermarket shelf. In the 1970s, a quiet revolution took place in the food industry that sealed the absolute dominance of the sweet taste on our planet once and for all. American manufacturers began mass introducing high fructose corn syrup. Developed in Japan, this technology proved to be a goldmine for business. The new syrup cost pennies compared to cane or beet sugar. It mixed perfectly with liquids, kept products fresh on shelves for weeks, and prevented them from going stale. Around the same time, the golden era of low-fat foods began. Terrified of heart attacks, shoppers searched for items stamped with the coveted 0% fat label. But fat-free food had a major issue. Without fat, it became bland, dry, and tasted like damp cardboard. No one would eat it willingly. Manufacturers had to save sales fast. The solution was cynical and simple. The removed fat was compensated with heavy doses of sugar and cheap corn syrup. Thus, the era of hidden sugar was born. Today, walking down a standard supermarket aisle, you'll find a shocking thing. According to ingredient sheets, refined sugar is added to 74% of all packaged foods on the shelves. It's not just candy, cakes, or soda. The real disguise happens where we don't expect a sweet taste at all. Take an ordinary bottle of BBQ sauce or ketchup. Almost a third of its volume is pure sugar. A slice of sandwich bread or a soft burger bun contains sugar to create an appetizing crust and softness. Canned green peas, sweet canned corn, convenience meals, instant soups, and those healthy fitness yogurts. They are all literally saturated with refined carbs.
You can avoid desserts all day, eat only healthy prepared meals from plastic containers, and still unknowingly consume the equivalent of 15 teaspoons of sugar daily. We think we control our diet, but we are actually hostages to industrial recipes that force us to buy the product again and again by exploiting our evolutionary dopamine hook. But the real danger isn't even in the massive volume of this consumption. The problem is that our body is physically unable to handle the chemical mixture that ordinary table sugar breaks down into inside our stomach. One half of it triggers a riot in the blood, while the other deals a silent, devastating blow to our main internal filter. To understand why sugar is so destructive, we have to look under a microscope. Common table sugar, sucrose, is not a single compound. Entering our stomach, it instantly splits into 2 completely different molecules, glucose and fructose in equal parts. And our body processes them through 2 fundamentally different pathways. The first molecule is glucose. It is the basic fuel for our body. When it enters the bloodstream, blood sugar levels skyrocket. The pancreas reacts instantly. It releases the hormone insulin. Insulin's job is to act as a key that unlocks cells and shoves glucose inside to turn it into energy. But if you regularly drink sweet soda or snack on pastries, this mechanism starts to fail. Due to constant carbohydrate assaults, the pancreas is forced to work at its limit, flooding the blood with insulin. Over time, cells simply grow tired of this constant noise. Their receptors lose sensitivity and go deaf. Insulin resistance develops, a condition where cells are locked out from energy and all the sugar remains circulating in the blood, slowly destroying blood vessels. This is a direct path to type 2 diabetes.
But if glucose strikes the blood vessels in pancreas, then the other half of sugar, fructose, acts much more deceptively. Fructose does not trigger an immediate insulin release, which is why for a long time it was even considered a safe alternative for diabetics. But the truth is, our body cells cannot use fructose directly at all. The only organ capable of processing it is our liver. In the wild, our ancestors got fructose exclusively from ripe fruits, but there it was securely sealed inside dietary fiber. Fiber slowed down digestion, and fructose reached the liver in microscopic doses that the organ handled easily. But when we drink a glass of processed juice or eat a chocolate bar, the fructose, stripped of all dietary fiber, crashes onto the liver like a biochemical tsunami. The liver simply has no defense mechanisms against such overload. Pure fructose metabolism in its cells is virtually identical to the metabolism of ethanol.
In essence, for the liver, there is no difference between a cup of sweet soda and a dose of alcohol. Overwhelmed by the flow, the liver begins urgently converting excess fructose into fat droplets. This triggers steatosis, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. The organ literally drowns in fat. Furthermore, this fat is deposited deep inside the abdominal cavity, wrapping around our internal organs and creating dense, dangerous visceral fat. We think we just ate a dessert, but for our body, this is profound internal stress, the consequences of which go far beyond physiology. After all, the sweet conspiracy affects more than the liver and pancreas. It penetrates where our consciousness is born, hijacking our brain and forcing us to act like lab creatures in a locked cage. To see the scale of this addiction, we have to look inside a quiet laboratory at Princeton University. There, under the guidance of Professor Bart Hobel, they studied the behavior of ordinary rats for years. Researchers gave rodents regular access to sweet syrup and recorded changes in their behavior and neurobiology. The results were chilling. The animals developed all the classic signs of severe substance addiction. First came tolerance. Over time, the rats needed more and more of the sweet solution to get the same level of pleasure. Then came abstinence, a real withdrawal syndrome. When the syrup was replaced with plain water, the animals began pacing their cages, their paws shaking, and their anxiety levels skyrocketing. But the most telling experiment was yet to come. When rats were given a free choice between sugar syrup and cocaine, the overwhelming majority of the rodents chose sugar instead. The highly potent drug lost to simple sugar water. Our brains are wired the exact same way. Sugar bypasses rational barriers because, on a deep level, it is associated with absolute safety and survival. And the consequences of this craving for humans are measured not in abstract tests, but in dry medical statistics. In 2014, the prestigious journal JAMA Internal Medicine published a colossal study that lasted 15 years. Scientists found that if a person gets 17 to 21% of their daily calories from added sugar, their risk of dying from cardiovascular disease rises by 38%. And this is completely independent of their weight, age, or physical activity level. Sugar quietly and methodically destroys arteries from the inside. The World Health Organization recommends reducing sugar intake to 25 grams a day. That's about 6 teaspoons. But in developed nations, this norm is exceeded fourfold. And it's not a matter of our lack of discipline. We are ancient creatures. Our bodies, our hormones, and our brains still live by Paleolithic laws, where calories were a rare prize and a sweet taste guaranteed survival. We are programmed to seek it out. But today we are locked in a mad industrial maze where a primal survival instinct has been turned into a commodity. We still desperately wander the supermarket aisles, led by the voice of our ancestors, in search of that ripe, saving fruit. But the tragedy is that the wild savanna ended long ago, and the evolutionary trap snapped shut with the quiet, barely audible click of a plastic soda cap.